Welcome to another episode of Follow the Brand. I am your host, Grant McGaw, CEO of 5-Star BDM, a 5-star personal branding and business development company. I want to take you on a journey that takes another deep dive into the world of personal branding and business development using compelling personal stories, business conversations, and tips to improve your personal brand. By listening to the Follow the Brand podcast series, you will be able to differentiate yourself from the competition and allow you to build trust with prospective clients and employers. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Make it one that will set you apart, build trust, and reflect who you are. Developing your 5-star personal brand is a great way to demonstrate your skills and knowledge. If you have any questions for me or my guests, please email me at grant.mcgaugh, spelled M-C-G-A-U-G-H, at 5-star BDM, B for brand, D for development, M for masters.com. Now let's begin with our next 5-star episode on Follow the Brand. Welcome to the Follow Brand Podcast. I am your host, Grant McGaugh, CEO of 5-Star BDM, where we help you to build a 5-star brand that people will follow. I have a few questions that I would like to ask you. How will the post-pandemic recovery and recuperation be impacted by rising costs, workforce flux, burnout, and shortfalls? What about the compounding crises that are depleting resources and impacting supply chains? How will coverage and payor mix shifts affect the industry? And what about the changing competitive landscape with new entrants? And how will rising consumer expectations and the expanding impact of digital technologies, along with consumer-driven shifts in care delivery preference and modeling, play a role? Will the demand for improvements in health equity be met? And what about the negative EBITDA trends? And how will legacy industry leaders and employees push back against the transformational paradigm shift? These are the questions I ask my next guests, Robert Jehling and Matt Falkner of Silverline. Robert is the healthcare provider practice leader of healthcare GTM leader Silverline. He has over 23 years of experience in the areas of consumer lifecycle management, contact center design and management, marketing, business development, supply chain logistics, and consumer patient experience in Fortune 50 consumer service companies and national healthcare entities. He is an industry expert in the areas of healthcare consumerization, digital transformation, omni-channel engagement modeling. Robert has held healthcare executive leadership roles, including having been a Chief System Experience Officer and Chief System Access Officer for a top 25 integrated healthcare system, consultant and solution design subject matter expert to health systems, providers, and payers nationally. He has also been an executive digital operations, marketing, and consumer lifecycle management and strategy leader for Fortune 500 organizations. He has held executive leadership positions with AT&T, ShareCare, Baylo Media, Channers Prime Media, and Energy Future Holdings. Also, we have with us Matt Falkner. Matt Falkner is the sales director at Silverline with 10 years of experience in healthcare vertical, primarily focusing on providers, payers, and patients. Of those 10 years, he has 4 years working directly for a provider organization focused on behavioral health as a patient access director, patient access coordinator, and post-care outreach director. Matt has worked closely with Salesforce account executives and RVPs over the years to promote the flexibility and interoperability of the Health Cloud platform. He has led hundreds of provider and payer pursuits and speaks to the platform's value from his real-world experience as a user and director of similar provider organizations. Let us welcome Robert and Matt to the Follow Brand Podcast, where we are building a 5-star brand that you can follow. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Follow Brand Podcast. I am your host, Grant McGaw, and I am intrigued this week. I get an opportunity to bring to you health IT experts and the bird's eye view of the healthcare landscape as it is today and what it can look like tomorrow, and some solution sets that are going to help you. There's a ton of board members that the people I would say sit on boards in healthcare may or may not have some of this information. There's a lot of people in the C-suite, whether you're the CIO, the CTO, the CDO, the CFO, and all the other C-suites that may or may not have some of this knowledge. I wanted to compact it for you, get it to where you can understand it and use it in your particular endeavor. So I'm going to bring to the stage Mr. Robert and Mr. Matt, and we're going to talk about and have an open-ended discussion about the healthcare industry. So, Robert, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Robert Jehling. I'm a senior director with Silverline. I manage our provider practice group, lead our go-to-market efforts. Been in healthcare now a little over 15 years. Have been a chief experience and chief access officer for a top 25 integrated healthcare system, and then have been on the consulting side of the house with both Huron and Silverline now for the remainder of that tenure band. So prior to that, was in the consumer services world, led consumer and digital transformation as well as lifecycle management for AT&T, Singular, AT&T Wireless, the new AT&T, and then moved into the healthcare space coming out of that industry. So looking forward to providing some insight and some point of view around the things that we are seeing inside of the healthcare industry. And I'll let Matt introduce himself now.
Excellent. Go ahead, Matt.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Grant. So my name is Matt Falkner. I'm a sales director here at Silverline. I cover the Southeast. I've been working in healthcare for the last 10 years. I started with a healthcare organization that was a behavioral health, private addiction and mental health clinic. Worked there for about 5 or 6 years as a contact center director. Then transitioned over to Salesforce Consulting. We had implemented Salesforce ourselves at that behavioral health clinic, so I got my feet wet there. Really was looking forward to bringing that solution to other providers, so got into the Salesforce Consulting arena. Got certified as an admin and Service Cloud consultant. And since then, I've been working with organizations that are still struggling with spreadsheets, looking to transition them over to Salesforce. It's nice to be here. Thanks, Grant.
No, without question. So we're going to jump right in, gentlemen, because you are experts in your respective fields. One of the common questions that I get, and I listen to a lot of my guests on the podcast, it comes down to the healthcare landscape, what the outlook looks like. So a lot of them, we understand they need to transform, they need to make investments in certain areas, and it's a challenge with the status quo where we're at now. I want Robert help us understand the current trends in healthcare and the current things that really need to be top of mind as we think through digital transformation.
Sure, absolutely. I think 2023 is a unique year. It's got some carryover from problems and obstacles and headwinds that we're seeing in 2021 and 2022, primarily coming out of COVID. Obviously, most major healthcare systems are still dealing with the lack of recovery and recuperation from the patient volumes that has sort of eroded during COVID as most healthcare systems shifted to just focusing on urgent and emergent care for purposes of managing against the pandemic. And now that it's moved in truly an endemic, I think the primary focus is how do we effectively drive those patient volumes that we lost back to the normalized levels that we had pre-pandemic? And then how do we effectively drive the right growth, both from a quality and a quantity perspective of those patient volumes, to meet or exceed our strategic targets to recapture the market share that the provider had inside the marketplace prior to the pandemic, and then effectively drive the right growth against the populations that they serve and the natural growth that happened within those populations. I think you couple that to the fact that there's been a tremendous amount of workforce management and supply chain interruptions inside of the healthcare system, which leads to the immediate fact to how do I recapture those volumes? How do I serve the current volumes that I have when I have a shortage of actual headcount to do that, both clinical and non-clinical? So automation becomes a major play in terms of how do I drive the right bandwidth constriction relief at point of service and through back office components in order to maximize my front end headcount to really deal with what's important, and that is the patient at point of service. And point of service today can be everything from on-site visits in the ambulatory space, in the inpatient space, in the outpatient diagnostic space, right up to and including telemedicine, as well as any episodic care that's happening by phone, or even in the areas of click to chat or leveraged artificial intelligence. It really becomes down to a preference of the patient in which they want to engage with the actual provider and the system as a whole. I think there is still a focus around how do we create a consumer retail care-centric delivery model that actually keeps the patient at the center. Healthcare systems just are not hardwired like retail service organizations to really drive a true consumer-centric experience. And I think based on a much more competitive environment, you've got lots of new entrants into the marketplace. CVS acquiring Oak and Signify Health. You've got Walgreens expanding its retail-centric care delivery models. There's all sorts of independent, urgent and emergent care centers that are being driven in the marketplace. And the reality is healthcare systems need to figure out a way on how to drive the right engagement, activation, care delivery model, and post-care delivery communication that really drives to the preference of the patient, which in all candor in today's marketplace is comparable to other consumer goods and services that they effectively take part in. So figuring out how you really drive improved engagement and how you couple that engagement to a best-in-class overarching experience in conjunction with best-in-class clinical outcomes. I think on top of that, there's also a striving need to aggregate data and learn from the data sets that are there. I think healthcare systems now, more than ever, most healthcare entities, period, whether they be payers, providers, pay buyers, durable medical goods, device providers, et cetera, are all looking to understand what does the data they have at their fingertips actually tell them. Not only tell them about their patient populations, but also tell them about predictive modeling around the way they need to address service levels as they ebb and flow. How do you create the right supply-demand modeling? How do you really understand the quality and the quantity of your market share? How do you understand the referral patterning and the trends? How do you understand your churn? Churn mitigation is another big focus. How do I keep my patients that are worth dollars to me from a lifetime value perspective inside my system without a fractured share wallet? How do I keep them coming back to me for the entirety of their patient population management health care portfolio and leverage them through the continuum of care? So I think also understanding how do I aggregate and how do I make data and analytics work for me as a system? How do I operationalize that? How do I visualize that? And how do I continue to enhance it based on what I'm finding? And not only how do I leverage what I have, what other unique data sets or analytics are out there that I want to pull in to my operating model, both from a clinical care perspective and from a general operations perspective, as well as from a consumer marketing perspective. I also think that they are looking for improvements or innovations inside of their care delivery model. How do I effectively take technology? How do I take other process flow enhancers? And how do I recreate the way I'm delivering care to my patients at point of service? This totally goes back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of understanding what your patient's preference are. How do you segment your marketplace? How do you drive the right cohorts within those segments? How do you understand the demand model for the way they want care delivered? And then how do you create innovations inside of that care delivery model that actually align to, match up, and meet the consumer expectation? And then on top of that, how do I basically drive a reduction in burnout, voluntary attrition, and how do I mitigate the way I engage with my employees to minimize voluntary attrition within my workforce management model. It's very difficult to deliver quality and quantity of care without the degradation to service levels when you have an influx and a revolving door within your staffing models. So how do I basically recruit and retain the right talent? How do I take the talent that I have and develop it? And then how do I ensure that the right engagement and the right experience for my employees is there as an employer within the healthcare system? And then how do I effectively give them the tools to actually carry out their jobs in a manner that actually drives the most meaning and the most benefit to both them and the patient? If you wear the badge, you are the brand. So ensuring that your frontline staffs, your clinical delivery staffs, your back office staffs have the right tools, the right technologies, the right cultural engagement, and quite frankly, the right attention and the right vocational expansion within the organization is as paramount today as it's ever been. Otherwise, there's no way to really deliver service to the volumes you have today, let alone the targeted growth volumes that you're seeking in the marketplace. I think all of those things really boil down to people, process, and technology. It's how do I get to the core three, and how do I effectively prioritize and hierarchy those that are most important based on my strategic imperatives, and where do I want to actually put my level of spend? And I think healthcare systems have absolutely figured out that the 4 areas they're going to invest their money in going into 2023 in order to survive and thrive in 2024 and 2025 is going to be into innovation of the care delivery model, improved consumer and patient engagement. Remember, they're consumers until they actually engage for clinical care, then they become patients, and then they revolve back into consumers again. And the goal is to get them to come back to you again and again and again. How do I drive the right automation to offset my staffing shortfalls and staff augmentation needs, but also improve the process flows and the lack of redundancy that will create a better operational and clinical experience for both patient and employee? And then what new innovative services do I need to bring into the fold, and what do I need to aggregate from my data and analytics to actually drive the right visibility to the right reporting so that I can measure what I'm managing and managing what I'm measuring? So I think in a nutshell, and that's a lot, but those really are the 4 key areas that I think healthcare systems are prioritizing their focus and their spend on in 2023. Again, thrive and survive in 24 and 25. And I think that the headwinds that I mentioned are really the triple cause around why and how they're doing those things.
That is an excellent overview of the challenge and the need to transform. I want to ask Matt, because first of all, help us understand who Silverline is and the problem that you're solving for some of these challenges.
Thanks, Grant, for the question. Silverline's a platinum level Salesforce consultancy. We were established back in 2009. Our company focuses on 3 main business types: healthcare, financial services, as well as media and entertainment. In our healthcare vertical, we assist provider organizations and payers to identify how to best leverage the Salesforce platform in concert with their other tech stacks, really to drive the right type of efficiency and innovation, really putting them in the best position to achieve not only their financial goals, but their consumer patient experience goals and patient outcomes. Silverline really helps providers focus on the patients, allowing them to deliver quality care and better outcomes while we focus on the technology. Silverline deploys solutions at a national level, so we see and understand the trends that are happening with our payer and our provider clients, and we understand the headwinds also that they're facing. So we really build with the end in mind for our clients, meaning that we understand that the perfect future state will take some time to achieve, but depending on the client's maturity level for transformation, we take it one step at a time.
Well, I tell you, I've heard from both of you, and I'm going to put on my hat here as a healthcare executive, board member of a major healthcare system. And I tell you, this is my problem. And I heard what you guys are telling about the challenges and what things that you're doing. My problem right now is negative EBITDA. I got negative EBITDA. I know I need to transform. I need to change. But as Robert was talking about, I've got to prioritize my spend. That's a big risk because I'm not sure the outcome. What would your advice be?
I think the first thing I would do is really identify exactly what is the trigger reason code or codes that I've actually seen my EBITDA flow into the negative state. Most major healthcare systems have not been able to, not because they don't have the data, it's the lack of getting visibility of that data, and it's the lack of actually visualizing the data and interpreting the data. Understanding exactly what has impacted your top line revenue streams. Those top line revenue streams are typically generated from things like referrals, order sets, ancillary sets. And 9 times out of 10, healthcare systems are unfortunately incapable of really getting precision measurement around where those things are coming from. Creating a heat map of the marketplace and understanding by specific CPT code, by referral type, by ancillary order set, by surgical order set. What is both the quality of the volume that I have coming in from a payer mix perspective? What is the quantity of the volume? And what is my share of the total volume that the marketplace is actually creating versus what I'm getting? And more importantly, of what I'm getting, what I am converting, and really understanding what I am not converting. And what are the reason codes behind that? The leakage issue is the number one pipeline to understanding why my top line revenue streams are failing or succeeding or not meeting growth expectations if they are succeeding to a certain extent. So I think understanding that first. And then secondly, by understanding exactly where the marketplace is in terms of service level demand, by referral type, by specialty type, by surgical case type, what exactly does my supply demand model look like to actually capitalize and provide response to those level of services? Do I have the right number of physicians in the right practice groups? Do they have the right access models in place that actually allow for patients to be seen or providers to refer patients to be seen in the time frame that they want to be seen? How do I benchmark against the top 3, top 4 competitors in the marketplace that are all vying for the same patient populations? What does my overarching consumer experience look like? Do I have the right engagement model to actually proactive leverage notification to the patient of why I should be the destination point for their health and wellness in the marketplace, let alone the communication to the actual providers that act as the springboard for those referrals or the routing of those patients inside the system? And then on top of that, do I actually have the right processes? Do I have the right people? And do I have the right technology and data analytics to drive the right life cycle management of the patient through the continuum of care? Am I operationally efficient in being able to facilitate both the arrangement and the coordination and the care delivery, as well as the post-care delivery, from everything from a supply chain perspective with medical goods, surgical trays, prescriptions, et cetera? Do I have the right model in place to actually drive efficient communication across the care teams that are effectively managing these patients through their episodic care journeys? Do I have the right routing and the right communication threads being sent to the patient at the right time, at the right place, through the right preference center to drive the right engagement? There's 2 types of overarching leakage. There's gross leakage, which I lose on the front end because I'm never able to actually slot the patient. And then there's net leakage, where the patient actually comes in and then doesn't return for their continuum of care or care directive because something was broken in the way the process was provisioned for them, whether that was an experience issue, a logistics issue, what have you. And I think on top of that, understanding where am I operationally heavy in terms of expense, or where am I operationally understaffed that leads to revenue leakage as a result therein. Maybe a patient doesn't come back because you don't have the care delivery staff to actually get the patient in their care delivery path in front of a doctor, in front of a provider, in front of an ancillary location in the time frame in which the patient wants to act. So I think the first 2 steps are really understanding, what do I get? How efficiently am I actually driving the throughput of what I get? What am I not getting? What are the reason codes for why I'm not getting it? And then isolating what are the controllable reason codes for what I'm not getting, and then how do I address those through people, process, and technology? Again, it boils down to those core 3. On top of that, it also has to do with the fact you have the right cultural engagement model that keeps your employees wanting to deliver the level of service and the quality of service that the patient is expecting or the referring provider is expecting. And is that actually being consistent in terms of fit, feel, and finish through the entirety of the care delivery model? The other component also is really when I look at the balance of my payer mix inside of my organization from a care delivery perspective, do I have a balance of patient population where I'm not spending the majority of my time because of the leveling of the patient volume with high-risk patients that I'm continually trying to scramble to create low risk for them, or they're non-compliant or not adherent to the care directives. And we're spending a lot of time chasing people that aren't really coming in in an open and compliant way to take care of their health versus the front end loss of patients that are in the well status that you're trying to mitigate from becoming complicated or high risk because the access is always focused towards this side of the spectrum instead of this side of the spectrum. How do you create that balance of overall prevention, treatment, and maintenance of the patient population? So I've started looking at tech stacks and understanding where do I have redundancy? Is there operational opportunities to actually consolidate? Do I have the right processes in place that are maximizing the technical stacks that I have in place, actually driving the route outputs? Do I have the right engagement model from a marketing perspective? And marketing, unfortunately, has this nomenclature in healthcare being focused on sponsorships and brand advertising. The reality is marketing is the plan. The department is just an execution vehicle of that plan in order to drive the right outreach, attraction, activation, engagement, and care delivery for the very patient population that you serve, on top of marketing to the providers from an independent clinically integrated network perspective that you're dependent on for those referral volumes. The doctor is just as important as a consumer as is the patient. So I think that's where I would start. And I'd start to understand what really are the trends that are controllable, that I can manipulate back towards what I'm trying to do, which is get to those top line revenue streams, coupled to the reduction in operating expense to get to a net EBITDA or positive EBITDA. And how do I prioritize those against where I'm having the biggest bleed inside of my healthcare system? Is it on the front door? Is it on the back door? Is it during the process flow that I'm treating those patients? That's my perception.
This episode is brought to you by 5-Star BDM. 5-Star BDM is a professional consulting and advisory group keenly focused on business development services for small to mid-sized businesses and entrepreneurs. Although every business is unique, they often share challenges that can be addressed through smart branding. Services include process improvement in operations, digital strategy and transformation, business intelligence, digital marketing, and personal branding. Our 5-Star business and personal branding company has helped a number of professionals and organizations to optimize and grow. The result is more business, more opportunities, better reach, positive outcomes. Please visit www.5starbdm.com to learn more and view all the episodes of Follow the Brand. Okay, Robert, that's definitely food for thought. When I think about decision support, how do I get that information? And if I made a significant investment in Salesforce, I know you have integrations into my EHR, you've done some things around cost efficiencies. Help me understand what Robert just laid out, Matt. How would Silverline help optimize an investment in Salesforce to integrate and get to some better efficiencies?
Great question, Grant. One of the biggest differentiators that Silverline offers in the marketplace is a combination of our intimate knowledge of the healthcare industry, our knowledge of Salesforce, and our subject matter experts. We come in as a trusted advisor and a partner with our clients to solve short-term and long-term problems, leveraging the Salesforce platform. We look at the deployment of CRM inside of a provider organization as one of the 3 foundational tech stacks in their organization, the others being ERP and their EHR. And once we determine where our clients fall on the technology maturity curve and what their use case needs are, we effectively create a detailed roadmap that can be pursued by them at the right time with the right resource mix and time requirements, as well as the right budget that the client can actually facilitate. So we have a very adaptive methodology that allows our clients to get the most out of the platform, helping them leverage the platform for conventional and even unconventional use cases, and really go at the pace that makes the most sense for them. In simple terms, we're able to really do 4 main things, and that's identify what they need the CRM platform for, design it to meet those needs, and then help them by recommending the Salesforce license types and volumes, and then really develop the right crawl, walk, run approach that allows for maximum adoption and utilization of the platform?
Yeah, I mean, most healthcare systems have come to the conclusion that a CRM is a requirement inside of their operating model. I mean, if you think about the triangle of technology that really creates the service delivery and the care delivery pyramid, it's ERP, it's EHR, and it's CRM. And effectively understanding how the CRM acts as an extension or an optimizer for the other two technology stacks in that triangle. The things that we will effectively do is come in and identify what are the major pain points that you're trying to solve for, what are the main strategies or tactics you want to take to get to positive EBITDA based on the question you asked. Mm-hmm. And then identify and provide the right advisory guidance and the right point of view based on having done this for a myriad of large major healthcare systems and the tier 2s and the tier 3s. How do we basically identify the use cases that make the most sense, that drive the right outcome, that allow for an immediate speed to value in terms of deployment, but also create a foundation for building with the end in mind? CRM is a foreign concept to most healthcare entities. This is the one industry I would argue that has lagged in actually understanding what consumer relationship management really means. CRM is not a technology. CRM is a strategy. Salesforce is a technology that allows consumer relationship management strategy as a vehicle to actually occupy and run the route that you're effectively laying out as your strategic roadmap. So to Matt's point, identifying what is most important. What are the systems of record that you have in place? How do those systems of record need to connect and talk to one another to drive the right engagement model, the right clinical outcomes and care coordination and care pathing outcomes? And then what do you need from a supply chain perspective, a financial perspective, and from an HR people capital perspective to actually make all of that happen? And effectively creating a roadmap that identifies with each use case where that all plays into a larger enterprise strategy. Healthcare systems are notorious for buying technology stacks that solve a point solution issue. And more times than not, they'll actually do that redundantly. You'll have 5 solutions set up to solve the same problem in 5 different areas of the healthcare system, and nobody really understands that those need to be threaded across into one consolidated platform that will actually have an enterprise approach. So taking into things like integrations, well, they may or may not be necessary. It's really what is the most important outcome for the actual use case if you are the provider. Is integration really a requirement? Do I want a point solution integration, or do I want to look at a more enterprise-wide solution when the right number of use cases makes sense? What does the interoperability need to look like between the systems that are going to be functioning with the CRM as I'm driving whatever it is I'm doing in terms of patient care? If I'm doing care coordination, how do I make that interoperate with my telephony platform? How do I leverage what Salesforce can do in terms of creating the right profile and the right engagement model and the right scripting model? Scripting meaning the process flow for which I extract information from the patient in order to create a scheduling of an event with the right provider at the right location at the right time. How do I want it to operationalize with my EHR? Are there other systems of record like patient population health management systems that need to come into play? There are Matt's point earlier, there are specific accelerators and there are turnkey solutions that can be implemented right out of the gate. But the reality is there is a nuance and a level of customization to a certain extent that every healthcare system is going to have based on their care delivery model. So that would be the way I would start. I would sit down with the respective party or parties, and let's be candid, in a major healthcare system, there is never an individual decision maker. It is a decision by committee. And rightfully so, because when you look at a healthcare system, it is an amalgamation of departments that through interoperability create the right experience and the right clinical outcome for the patient. I'd get those people in a room and really understand what are we trying to achieve, what's the issue or problem that we're trying to solve for, and let's sit down and really identify what is the right solution step to achieve that objective. And is it CRM on its own? Is it CRM in concert with other things? Is it CRM in concert with things like people and process improvements coupled to data analytics? So that would be the way it would start. And at the end of the day, what Matt said is absolutely accurate. We've become so proficient at this, we can pinpoint exactly what the business value study would look like. What am I actually going to see in terms of operational investment to make the ideation of my platform work? And then what am I actually going to see in terms of realized and recognized revenue? And what is the timing for that? Because in my mind, that is probably the most important. How much front-end investment do I need to make before I start to actually see a return on that investment given my financial situation in today's marketplace? Does that make sense?
100%. Now I want to ask one more question. One more question. I think it's important for my audience to understand, because what you've laid out is very, very attractive and understandable. Now I want to know what does success look like? Who have you done this for? Not naming any names, in which you came out with a successful outcome utilizing Silverline, and kind of lay that, what was the pathway to success? What did that look like? And if you want to put some ROI numbers in there, that's fine. Just help me understand what success looks like by working with Silverline. And either of you can answer that question.
I think success working with Silverline is really bucketed into three areas. Number one, we're a smaller to mid-sized firm that has an agile model engagement style, meaning that we're cultural adaptatively, and we can turn on a dime and really consolidate our efforts to fit the maturity level that your organization is. And when I say maturity level, meaning the internal readiness to actually take into account what technology stacks can do and where are you in terms of readiness to actually not only initiate the leveraging of them, but how does that actually functionally play out as your maturity level and your internal readiness grows to leverage the technology stack based on where you are today, where you want to be tomorrow, and ultimately where you want to be in end state. The second component is that we're actually able to come in and identify the right use case that drives the right return on investment based on the prioritization of whatever the hierarchy of need is. We've seen instances with large healthcare organizations, like you mentioned earlier, the question of where do I start with my money? Well, we've seen instances where healthcare systems really needed to understand why that money had evaporated. We've implemented provider referral management and provider referral patterning use cases with Salesforce that have clearly articulated and visualized exactly where the referral volume is, what percentage they are and are not getting, and identified the reason codes, controllable and non-controllable, as to why, which led to process improvements. Something like that could have an immediate impact of taking average leakage rates that could range from 40 to 60% in most major healthcare systems down to 30 or 20%. I mean, that's a significant bump in frontline revenue opportunity, not to mention the expanded qualitative value that you'll see by understanding the payer mixes that are coming. Your BDMs and your physician liaison teams now have an equipped army of information to go out and really work with providers to understand, why do I get referrals from you, but why do I only get a referral volume that's in a certain mix when I'm capable of handling the totality of your mix? Improving things like care gap closures. I mean, healthcare systems have a tremendous amount of chase lists for patients that have been non-compliant with actually closing their care gaps. That has significant impacts on their risk mitigation strategy, their utilization strategies, and quite frankly, impacts on the contracts they have with their payers, which can significantly impact reimbursement rates, as well as things that are unspoken, like turnaround times for pre-certifications and pre-authorizations, peer-to-peer reviews, scrutiny on medical necessity components. We've seen instances where we're able to leverage Marketing Cloud and Health Cloud in tandem to actually improve not only the volume of outreaches in an automated fashion to these patients that have been non-compliant that need to close their care gaps, but also seen an improvement in response rate of anywhere from 10 to 16%. And of that 10 to 16% improvement in response rate, we've seen conversion rates that are closer to the 60 or 70th percentile, which means all of a sudden there's a big burst of two benefits to the system. An initial benefit in that I'm physically closing the care gap. I am driving a better clinical outcome for my patient, and I am creating the right risk mitigation against anything that they may have from that care gap evolving into something more serious, which means right off the bat, they're recuperating revenue they've already built into their care plans for those prospective patients. And then take into account that when you close those care gaps, 1 out of every 3 or 4 mammograms results in some type of oncological journey based on a mass being found. 1 out of every 5 colorectal screenings results in some type of additional episodic care. So it's not just the revenue stream that comes from the initial care gap being closed, it's also the add-on episodic care. In instances where you've just seen that 10 to 12% increase in closure, you could equate literally millions upon millions of dollars of found revenue just in closing the care gap, coupled to the add-on episodic care that comes from it. And when you look at that against maybe a $300,000 or $400,000 investment of leveraging a CRM platform on the front end, that's a pretty hearty return on investment. So at the end of the day, we've seen this inside of the contact center with improving reductions in cost per call, improving throughput and overarching customer experience, which has led to improved access modeling. We've seen CRM basically come in and effectively drive improved visibility to referral patterning and also the way referrals are managed, making the right people and process changes because of visibility to what the CRM applied to the system, leveraging the optimization in patient population health management, being able to actually do things like improving your transfer center for quality and quantity of transfers coming into a system, improving your overall post-acute care coordination rates in terms of getting the right care coordinated for patients after discharge, as well as just improving continuity of care rates and improving the overarching compliance with the order sets that are provided within discharge for patients. And then the overarching improvements in just marketing for purposes of engagement, leveraging the platform for systematic engagement across the entirety of the patient journey, improving preparation rates that lead to reductions in surgical cancellations because patients are now more effectively reached out to and compliant and acknowledge receipt of the instructions they have to follow before surgery. There's a lot of money left on the table for a healthcare system and a lot of negative impact to an outcome from a health and wellness perspective if a patient forgets that they're not supposed to take their blood thinning medication before a procedure. All of a sudden you're canceling a procedure, an OR suite goes unused, a doctor has a surgical order set that doesn't get fulfilled, and a lot of revenue is lost, as an example. So those are just some high-level examples of where we've gone in and improved specific areas of the healthcare system, leveraging CRM in conjunction with the other tech stacks that are there. But it's also creating the right change management to drive the right adoption and utilization of the platform. It's one thing to have a Ferrari that you're only driving, in 3 of the 6 gears. It's another thing when you're literally leveraging the Ferrari for all 6 gears and using it for what you purchased for, which is a performance machine.
I've seen that happen so many times. You buy a software or technology supposed to solve a lot of different problems, and maybe you didn't get enough training. You didn't understand the platform as much. So, Matt, you want to chime in on this? Help me understand. If I'm engaging with you, and you're bringing the team to the table and that type of thing, what is it that you're looking for? What you're doing on a day-to-day basis, helping your client?
This really goes back to our methodology. First, we look at the total scope of work, outlining their short-term and long-term priorities. And then we set them up with the right Silverline resources that can get the job done at their pace. We meet with their stakeholders and their leaders and facilitate discovery and requirements gathering to make sure that we have the solution well documented. Then we look at the output of that, and we find places where we can leverage our experience with past engagements and determine what needs to be replicated to develop the right best practices, and more importantly, to help our clients avoid costly mistakes, especially if they're just doing this for the first time. It's better to work with a Salesforce partner who has a proven track record like Silverline's.
I think you summed that up quite nicely.
Now, this has been wonderful. We're going to conclude here, but the audience has got to understand, first of all, how to contact you and where to go to get additional information. And then, again, I want to congratulate both of you for giving me a very, very good understanding, because what you said earlier, and it really resonated with me around, you don't even hear about CRM in healthcare a lot as a major driver of impact. And you hear about the EHR, and there's a lot of angst around it. You hear a lot about patient or telehealth and remote patient monitoring, some other things, but not understanding where does that CRM kind of fit into this whole puzzle and piece and how it really drives impact. I think I got a lot out of that.
No, we appreciate that. Just as a sidebar note, globally, there was $13.9 billion spent on leveraging CRM in healthcare in 2022. Industry forecasts show that by 2028, it's going to be close to a $28.8 billion spend. And this year alone, we're looking at a minimal 12 to 15% growth in terms of leveraging CRM. To put it quite plainly, CRM should be your engagement system of record. The EHR should be your clinical system of record. And then obviously your ERP plays into a myriad of systems of record for supply chain, finance, and general human resources. So leveraging CRM as an optimization tool for the other two, as an extension of those two, is an important thing to take into account. And it's no different than what the rest of the consumer services world has been doing for the last 30 years. Consumer relationship management is one of the 3 foundational pillars for success in the consumer services world. And I think healthcare now has to realize consumerism has brought it kicking and screaming into the 21st century. And as such, adopting best-in-class technologies that have proven and have proof of concept with driving the right engagement level, the right adherence and compliance level, and the right growth level with their consumers, and in this case, it's patients, is something that should become part of their core strategy. I think most every healthcare system realizes it now. It's just, how do I go into that unknown space that I'm not real comfortable with? Because let's just face it, doctors, most healthcare executives that have been enriched and brought up within the healthcare industry have never really looked at healthcare as a consumer service. They looked at it as something that was very unique and very specialized because we're dealing with the most important asset anybody owns, themselves. And unfortunately, that no longer resonates with the consumer, the patient. So it's adapt and overcome. And to your point, I'm glad that came across because I think it's an important consideration that most providers need to take into care.
Question. So they want to get in touch with you, Robert. What is the best way?
I think the best way is going to our website or reaching out to myself or Matt via email, and we can provide that to you to blast out in conjunction with this, if that works for you. And then obviously, we would love to engage with anyone who has any additional questions or comments or just wants to hear our point of view. I think one of the most fundamental unique things about us is we're not a sales organization. We're a consulting organization that wants to help you achieve your goals and your objectives for both provider, patient, and system. And with that being said, our job is to come in and provide you a point of view and make a recommendation that makes the most sense based on that point of view and your need. And when you're ready to do it, you'll make the right decision on whom you want to engage with. So I think our website, and we'll be forwarding out our email addresses and our contact information if they'd like to get in touch with us.
All right. And Matt, any parting last words?
Yeah, I would just want to reiterate the Silverline differentiator to your listeners, letting them know that the Silverline team really consists of professionals from all aspects of healthcare. We have past CMOs, COOs, CXOs, and CAOs like Robert. So our team really has lived this on both sides of the table, and that itself is an invaluable resource. Robert has shared a lot of great insight into the headwinds in the industry and what's really around the corner. So what I would want to make sure that your listeners understand is that really don't be afraid to innovate. The solutions they're looking for to their biggest problems really lie in technology. Also to be open-minded and learn from those who have done this before. After all, this is how they're really going to get the most adoption out of the CRM platform. This has been great, Grant. Thanks so much.
Oh, well, without question. I want to piggyback on that. They can always go to my website to get a lot of these podcasts. We share this information for everybody to have a library of knowledge that you can go to and listen directly to the industry experts, especially when you're thinking about what is my next move. I know I've got a problem, but how can I get it solved? Silverline definitely is a organization that you should engage and consult with and understand some of these challenges that are in healthcare right now. So you can go to my website at www.5starbdm, and that is B for brand, D for development, M4masters.com. This has been wonderful, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Brad, thank you.
Thanks,
and
man.
Again, you provide a wonderful service to the community inside of the healthcare industry. And again, your podcasts are invaluable. So thank you for allowing us to participate in them today.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks.